Hey there, humans. Obviously I made this video with the purpose of debunking National Geographic's video entitled Flat Earth versus Round Earth. Before I start, I wanted to say that anyone is more than welcome to use this footage or any of the content in this presentation for the purposes of sharing with others. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I did want to give a shout out to Rob Skiba, John the Morgile, Dr. Zach, the Potter's Clay channel, Globebusters, ODD, the Flat Earth Brothers, and everyone out there who's been seeking truth and sharing this kind of content. It's been really eye-opening for me personally over the past couple years. So National Geographic really only offered one experiment in their entire video to demonstrate the Earth's curvature. So I'm going to let them say what they have to say, and then we'll go ahead and dive in, and I'll show you some pretty eye-opening examples that just basically tear their experiment to the ground. So let's get started.
We are scientists in our lab, looking through the microscope.
We're heading to the largest lake in California to meet the Independent Investigations Group, which is a group that essentially debunks paranormal claims. And they want to do a round Earth test, basically a test that will prove that the Earth is not flat, but that it is round.
Let's go. We're ready to launch. You ready, Craig?
James, how are you?
Okay.
Okay, so what's happening here right now?
Okay, this is the boat-based target. It's horizontal stripes. We're going to launch a small boat out into the water here with a striped target. Come on, Betty! And as it gets farther and farther out, you'll start to lose the stripes.
One way that Aristotle proved 2,000 years ago that the Earth is a sphere was with a boat test, very similar to this one. As a boat approaches the horizon, it appears to slowly dip down into the water before disappearing completely. That's got everything to do with the curvature of the Earth. If the planet was flat, the entire boat would remain visible.
So it'll be a very visual depiction of the curvature of the Earth.
And what's really interesting is that some of the flat earthers, including Mark Sargent, are actually going to be here for this test. They want to see it for themselves. What do you think is going to happen here today?
I appreciate a scientific group coming out and trying to do this test. Great. Appreciate the enthusiasm, but cannot work.
Cannot work?
I'm ready. Bring it up.
So it's starting?
Yeah.
Okay, so the test is starting. It's starting right now.
At first, all the stripes are clearly visible. But sure enough, as the boat reaches the horizon, the stripes begin to disappear one by one.
It's pretty amazing. You can actually see it pretty clearly with this camera here. And you see that the red stripe that was at the bottom has completely disappeared, and it's now getting closer to sort of the middle green stripe, that is.
So we've lost about 1.5 stripes.
Right. So this can only happen, why?
Because of the curvature of the Earth. So here's what we were shooting.
But Mark Sargent and the other flat earthers have a very different interpretation of the results.
So you don't think that what we're seeing is actually real? You think it's because of heat?
Oh, absolutely heat.
Does anyone here in flat Earth believe it's a globe?
It's still flat. No, it's
Anyone? Raise a hand.
It's not a pear either.
This is a demonstration. It doesn't change anything for you.
Lord, no.
So let's take a look at what we learned from this experiment from National Geographic. First off, we can conclude that they started this experiment in about the least scientific way possible. Listen to their own words.
We're heading to the largest lake in California to meet the Independent Investigations Group, which is a group that essentially debunks paranormal claims. And they want to do a round Earth test, basically a test that will prove that the Earth is not flat, but that it is round.
So right out of the gate, they admit to starting their experiment with a complete bias and presupposition. They hired these guys at the Independent Investigations Group for the purpose of debunking flat Earth claims, instead of conducting an honest experiment from a group of unbiased researchers and just allowing the results to speak for themselves. They even state on their website that Executive Director James Underdown's goal is to spread a plague of skepticism across the world.
They even have $100,000 on the line if they can't debunk the claim. Does that sound like who you want conducting an unbiased investigation? Someone with 100 grand on the line? I'm definitely going to share a few examples from reality that completely blow this experiment out of the water. If you can even consider this an experiment and not just outright propaganda and fraud. But real quick, I want to analyze the details of the experiment, or more accurately, the complete lack of details. All they really provide as far as specifics are that they sent out a small boat on the Salton Sea, here where I live in California, and that boat had a canvas with 3 stripes on it. And they claim 1.5 stripes disappeared due to the curve of the Earth, as demonstrated in their camera footage. So before we debunk this together, let's look at the important and necessary details that they completely left out that I happen to notice. I'm sure some of you can think of some other things as well. But here's my list of things that I noticed. How large is the canvas that they're using? How large are the stripes on the canvas? What distance did they travel on the lake in nautical miles? How much drop was expected at that distance? Does this team of paranormal investigators even know the dimensions of the globe model Earth and how much drop they should expect and be looking for? How high did they raise the canvas above the water? What did they use to stabilize and keep the canvas level, since it seems like they just used their hands? And how high was the camera above the waterline? These are just a few of the details that I noticed that should have been included if this were a legitimate experiment. I noticed these things right away because I've been studying this subject matter in great detail since 2017, and in that time I have watched experiment after experiment demonstrating the complete absence of necessary curvature required by the globe model Earth, where such details as I listed here would not be left out. In fact, you can check out my page on Facebook called Flat Earth Archive, where I'm beginning to catalog some of these examples. Or if you want to see an experiment over a body of water resembling this experiment that actually seeks to honestly employ the scientific method, then I highly recommend checking out Flat Earth Laser Test Proves Flat Earth Parts 1 and 2 on Decimal Z's channel on YouTube. Then you'll see how one of these experiments should really be conducted. And considering how many resources National Geographic has at their fingertips, they really have no excuse for such neglect and absence of necessary details and data. But let's jump into the fun stuff now. Let's let them recap their conclusion and then debunk this thing.
And you see that the red stripe that was at the bottom has completely disappeared, and it's now getting closer to sort of the middle green stripe, that is.
So we've lost about 1.5 stripes.
Right. So this can only happen, why?
Because of the curvature of the Earth.
So the only reason for this happening is due to the curve of the Earth, huh? Really? So what we're looking at right here is a camera aimed at a candle through a magnifying lens. The magnifying lens is meant to act as the Earth's atmosphere when looking at an object at a distance. It's there to simulate atmospheric refraction. So I guess then this candle is rising and falling behind the curve of this perfectly flat table, right? I mean, that's the only explanation.
So this can only happen why?
Because of the curvature of the Earth.
Well, thank you, Mr. Unidentified Fishing Hat Man with a camera. Thank you for your stunning and in-depth conclusion.
Oh, you were finished? Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Although unnamed camera guy, who happens to be defending $100,000 on behalf of his employer, might be convinced, let's explore some details, shall we? The Salton Sea is roughly 15 by 35 miles. The globe model Earth is allegedly 7,917.5 miles in diameter, so slightly less than 8,000 miles in diameter. Thanks to spherical trigonometry and the Pythagorean theorem, we can get an accurate calculation of spherical surfaces and how much curvature and drop should exist depending on the dimensions of the spheroid in question. And thanks to modern technology, I can just pull up an Earth curvature calculator to determine the amount of drop that should exist on the globe model Earth for any given distance. For example, in just 5 miles, over 16 feet of drop should occur. How tall do you think this tiny boat and canvas are? In 10 miles, you have over 66 feet of drop. In 20 miles, over 200 feet of drop. Considering the fact that the Salton Sea is over 30 miles across at its furthest point, how were they only able to make less than 2 lines on the canvas disappear? Remember that in just 20 miles, over 200 feet of drop should exist. If they were truly seeking to demonstrate the globe model Earth's curvature, then why stop so soon and not document the entire crew and canvas disappearing? Even if you thought that the boat and canvas being used in the experiment were 20 feet tall, in just 20 miles you could bury that thing, even if it were stacked on top of itself 10 times. So what's the excuse for not documenting the complete disappearance behind the curvature of the Earth? Perhaps you falsely assume that they can't zoom that far. Well, here's the Toronto skyline from the shore of Lake Ontario in New York at over 30 miles away. So in that example, we clearly see that the technology exists to zoom out far enough to make the entire boat and canvas with all 3 stripes disappear. Also in that example, we could observe the complete absence of the 500 feet of drop that should exist in 30 miles if the globe model Earth were real. But honestly, I could have skipped all that and just showed you images of the Salton Sea from an airplane. No curve in sight. But is that not good enough for you? How about this high altitude airplane footage then? Still not good enough for you? I'm not sure how it couldn't be, but just in case, here's some weather balloon footage at over 100,000 feet. How many hundreds upon hundreds of miles do you think are in view at this altitude? Now this clip's going to take a few minutes, but I'll be back right after.
The first thing to watch for is, as the balloon is going higher and higher, the curvature of the Earth should become more and more obvious. As the balloon gets really high, we shouldn't be able to see the land off in the distance anymore because it should be dropping below the curvature of the Earth. And these amateur weather balloons can get really high these days, up to about 115,000 feet, which is 21 miles up there. So, the curvature of the Earth should be quite obvious. Also, the expected horizon should continue to drop lower and lower. But in reality, the horizon always rises to eye level because we live on a flat Earth. The second thing to watch for is this. As the balloon is rising higher and higher, the camera is panning back and forth, moving from side to side. And sometimes the camera even rotates 360 degrees in a full circle. Pay attention to how there is no curve in the horizon line. It is completely straight. On a globe Earth, this is impossible. As the camera moves from side to side, there should be a very noticeable curved horizon line. If the Earth is a ball, then it should have the shape of a ball. But there is no curve because the Earth is not a ball. The third thing to watch for is that the Earth is supposed to be spinning on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour. As you watch the video, notice that the ground and the clouds have no spin at all. There is no movement. And the fourth thing to watch out for is this. Notice that the sun will appear to be very close and that there are sun hotspots, places on the clouds and on the ground that are lit up from the sun. If the sun was really 93 million miles away, then there would never be any hotspots. Let me repeat that. Never any hotspots. The sunlight would cover the Earth as one big blanket of light, covering the entire Earth evenly. But this is not the case because science has lied to us. So, sit back and enjoy the video. Enjoy the truth as you see what the shape of the Earth really looks like. It's flat. I'm not doing a conclusion this time because the video speaks for itself. So thanks for watching. God bless, and I will see you next time. Here's the video.
If you can't see the complete lack of necessary curvature in all of these examples, then you probably never will. According to the globe model Earth's own dimensions, in just 50 miles, over 1,600 feet of drop should exist. In 100 miles, over 6,000 feet of drop. In 200 miles, over 26,000 feet of drop should exist. That's according to its own alleged dimensions. You cannot honestly claim to understand the scale and required drop of the globe model Earth and think that this type of view would be possible on it. Or this, or this, or this. Anyone who understands what has been presented so far cannot believe that no detectable curvature would be visible in these examples. They would quickly realize that such a complete absence of curvature at these altitudes and distances would be mathematically impossible on an alleged spheroid of less than 8,000 miles in diameter. And there would be no way possible they could believe that this pathetic excuse for an experiment is demonstrating the globe model Earth's curvature. There were actually quite a few fun things that I could have analyzed in the National Geographic video. For example, this guy.
Are they a threat to the work that you do as a scientist?
If, say, governments stop funding science because of some kind of anti-science, anti-intellectual feedback they're getting from the populace, that's when it really starts getting dangerous for our civilization.
But I figured I shouldn't make this too extremely long, and rather just focus on the only experiment they had to offer, allegedly demonstrating the globe model Earth's curvature. And honestly, experiments like these are the perfect example why people like myself find absolutely no confidence in the model. Because every time an alleged proof for detecting the globe model Earth's elusive curvature is brought forward, it ends up being fraudulent garbage, like this example from National Geographic. Or even better is when they bust out the space cartoons and the recycled story about Eratosthenes measuring shadows 2,000 years ago in Egypt. When those are your best pieces of evidence demonstrating the alleged curvature of the globe model Earth, it's not surprising to see how many people are coming out of such a delusional model. I don't know about you, but when I was young, my parents did the whole Santa Claus thing, which isn't a tradition that I've carried on with my kids. But the point is that one day I had to wake up and realize that something that I was taught since I was very young, that I honestly believed was reality, simply wasn't true. You guys gotta realize that you and I have access to technology to test the world around us, that scientists and astronomers like Newton, Eratosthenes, Galileo, and Copernicus never had access to. None of them could hop into an airplane and view the world around them. They couldn't just ascend to a high altitude like you and I can today and even look at the Earth that they were testing. They didn't have access to lasers, high-powered zoom lenses, infrared cameras, drones, rockets, digital gyroscopes, weather balloons, and so much more like you and I have today. So what will you believe? This or this?
The universe, what we're made of, galaxies, stars, planets, that's all right here. So, according to this chart, we are 96% stupid.
So the problem with cosmology is that we keep inventing theories, ad hoc theories, to try to explain the data, such as inflation, dark matter, dark energy, and so on, just to keep patching the theory up.
There is a crisis in cosmology. Usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
There's this passage I got memorized, sort of fits the occasion. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon them.